Yeah, good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedules. I know it's a Saturday, you want to relax, but yeah, thank you for taking out time and joining this workshop today with MindTribe. Yeah, it's going to be a very interactive workshop on the topic the effect of color on mood. And just to introduce myself, my name is Anyasha, and I'm super excited to explore the world of colors with you today. So, it's not going to be a boring workshop. I want you to think of this as a fun, safe, and colorful space where you can reflect, you can share, and also discover how colors shape your moods and our choices. It's something that we are exposed to as soon as we wake up in the morning, right? We're exposed to colors. So somewhere subconsciously, consciously as well, colors does affect our mood. So that is what we will be exploring more in depth today. So let me go forward. Yep. Okay, to introduce myself again, here's a little about me. My name is Anyasha Danlangste. I've studied psychology in my undergrad and post graduation as well. And currently, I'm working as the junior psychologist here in MindTribe. My focus in terms of specialties are relationship issues, anxiety, stress, and overthinking. And yeah, I'm very excited to be a part of this workshop and to conduct this workshop today. And to support me, I have my lovely colleague, Puvanshri. If you can just take over and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah. My name is Bhuvana. I pursued my master's in counseling psychology. I work as a full-time junior psychologist at MindTribe. So I'll be the co-host for today's workshop and I'll be addressing all your queries over the chat box. If there are some issues, you can type in the chat box where I'll be there. And there is some ground rules where keep your cameras and mic off throughout the workshop. If you have any question, use the raise hand feature and use the chat box. So we welcome you. Hope we have interaction session today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, I'm just going to cover a few workshop reminders before we dive into the world of colors. Let's set a few ground rules to make this a safe and engaging space. So remember that we're here to create a safe and fun space. That means that it's going to be a judgment free zone, and what happens here stays here. So the aspect of confidentiality is very important. And also, like my colleague has mentioned, kindly keep your microphones and your cameras off. If you want to share something, you can click on the raise hand button, or you can even type it out on the chat box, and I'll look into the question at the end of a certain topic just to ensure a smooth workshop. Most importantly, I want you guys to remember to be open to self discovery. Remember that colors are extremely personal. What feels calming to one person might feel overwhelming to another, and I think that's the beauty of it. So, with that being said, let's go through the objectives. So, our goals today are quite simple. We're looking to engage, reflect, and connect. So, we're going to engage with a lot of fun activities. We're going to understand what color psychology is and how it affects our mood, and also connect with each other through sharing. By the end, hopefully, you'll discuss and you'll discover your personal emotional color palette, as I'd like to say it. Okay. So, since we've spoken about the objectives, now let me walk you through the structure of today's colorful journey. So, we'll first understand the basics of color psychology, then, we'll explore how colors affect emotions. We'll also see how colors in our environments shape us, and we'll link colors to mental health. And finally, we'll wrap up with reflections and takeaways. But before we get into all the theoretical part of color psychology, I do just want to do a quick icebreaker activity. So yeah, the activity is a color check-in activity. I want you to tell me how you're feeling today, but not with words, but using a specific color. So if your current emotional state were a color, what would it be? You can type it out on the chat box. Okay, I see a few responses. White, kind and calm with clarity. Red, the heart. yellow, gray. Sandhya says orange. Sri Lakshmi saying orange, getting better after this workshop. Start a little soggy. Yes, it is Saturday. I understand. Yash says white, green. Okay, so I am noticing a pattern, a lot of whites here, and as well as orange and yellow. Someone saying blue. Okay. All right, thank you for the responses. Now I'm going to ask you another question. I want you to tell me why exactly have you chosen the color? If some of you have chosen white, orange, or yellow, why have you chosen this color? If you don't feel like sharing in the chat box, it's completely fine. You can just think within yourself and do some reflection as to why you're feeling this color. Kanvi says red is need attention to explore. White is simple and we can paint by ourselves with positivity. You feel it's neutral, not so happy, not so sad. That's a very interesting perception of the color yellow. Yes, white as it gives peace to our souls. Blue because of being trusted and calm. Yeah, so all very interesting responses. Now let's look at the third question. Has this color that you've chosen today always meant this for you? Have you always associated this color with this particular emotion? And I want you to remember the responses that you're putting in the chat box because we will be exploring it in the slides to come. Yes. No, with time actually. So for Suvarna, it depends on the context, I'm thinking, for Sri Lakshmi as well. Okay. No, with time and mood, color may change. That's true. Color is very subjective, and depending on the time, depending on the mood that you're in, depending on the context that you're in, it definitely changes. All right. Thank you so much for all of your responses. Like I said, please hold on to the responses because we will be discussing it in the slides to come. In the meantime, I'm going to be explaining what color psychology is all about. So in that activity, you've seen how, you've all given different responses and you're able to connect with each other as well in surprising ways. So this is what exactly color psychology really means. It's the scientific study of how different colors influence our emotions, behaviors, and perceptions. You can think of it this way. Color isn't just what we see, it's also what we feel. So if I explain it in a physiological way, when the light of different wavelengths or different color wavelengths enters the eye, the photoreceptors then send signals to the brain, including the hypothalamus and the limbic system, which is the part of the brain that regulates emotions and hormonal responses. So that explains why a red may make us feel angry, or blue may make us feel calm, green may make us feel like, okay, I'm ready for growth. So yeah, there was a study actually done as well, just to corroborate what I just spoke about, the scientific backing of color psychology. So there are two important studies. One is the influence of color on student emotion, heart rate, and performance, done in 2015. So this study found that students placed in vivid versus pale colors had completely different emotional responses. So their heart rates tend to increase in an environment where there was red and yellow, whereas their heart rate decreased and they found themselves to be more calm in an environment where blue or green were present. Another similar study, which is the impact of visual imagery of colored rose flowers on heart rate variability, which is HRV, found differences in the autonomic nervous system. I don't know if anyone is from the science background, but there's mainly parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight and flight, and also our rest and digest. So this study found that when people visualized colored roses, such as red, orange, and violet, this in fact increased their sympathetic drive, which prepares the body for the fight or flight. This drive increases our heart rate, our respiration, and also blood flow to muscles. Whereas when participants were exposed to blue, green, or indigo, this had an effect on the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest system. So, yeah, even if you take a look around you right now in the room that you're in, what's the dominant color in your surroundings? And think about how this is influencing your mood. You can share your responses in the chat box, but again, if you want to just think about it privately, you can do that too. Sri Lakshmi says white is calming. So I'm guessing that there's white in your background. Light and blue. How does that particular color make you feel emotionally? Pleasant. Okay, someone said green gives you a fresh feel. All right. So you can see with just this small exercise as well how strong the impact of color is on us. And we know that color psychology, it's not just about colors looking pretty, but physically and as well as psychologically, they affect us. So let's us look at why colors matter so much in our day-to-day lives and what it influences beyond just emotion, which people don't think about often. Let me just go to the next slide. Okay, so why does color matter? Why does understanding color psychology matter? So, of course, we've explored how color affects emotionally, it affects us in terms of our mood, how we feel, but also color can promote our energy, it can increase productivity, appetite, and decision making. So, how does this happen? If you look at the color blue, right? There was this study done in terms of mood and stress levels in 2018. They wanted to test whether exposure to blue light reduces anxiety in college students. And the findings actually showed that blue light significantly reduced reported anxiety and showed that color exposure can directly affect emotional states and not just perceptions. Even in terms of learning environment, most schools they choose colors like blue or green because it helps them concentrate, it reduces the heart rate and increases performance. But if you look at red, for example, red is always used in restaurant settings, especially in fast food chains. You can see a few examples here that I've added, like McDonald's or In-N-Out and Pizza Hut, because it stimulates appetite and increases heart rate. So even if you're not that hungry, it makes you feel hungry. So yeah, the effects are small but replicable, showing that color has measurable impact on our nervous system and not just on our emotions. And moving forward, let's look at how this is not just it's not just in terms of emotions, it's not just in terms of our energy, our productivity, but color affects us in so many ways that sometimes we don't even understand. But to take a little break from this, I do want to do this activity. It's becoming very popular on social media. People pay like a lot of money to do a color analysis of their undertones, but it's something that you can do at the comforts of your own home as well. So these are the two tests that you can do in determining your undertone. The first one is the vein test. So you can look at the color of your veins and see if they're blue or purple. So for example, if you have blue or purple, then you have a cool undertone, which are these colors right here, or these colors right here. And if you have green veins, then you have warm undertones, which are these and these colors. Similarly, you can also do the white t-shirt test, in which you can hold a white t-shirt next to your face and see if you're putting the white t-shirt next to your face, if the undertone is rosy or bluish. So if it's rosy, then you can say that again, you have a cool undertone. And if it's yellow or golden, then you have a warm undertone. And if there's no noticeable change, then you can say that you have a neutral undertone. But again, this is just a fun little activity. This is me no way saying that this is, these are the colors that you should wear all the time. You're free to wear whichever colors that you want. At the end of the day, like I said, colors are very subjective, and you should wear the colors that you feel most confident in. So if you want to, you can take a screenshot of this, or I can even send it in the group later for your reference. So yeah, like I mentioned in the first activity that we did, the color check-in activity, I told you guys to hold on to the responses, and this is the reason why. So I want to revisit the color check-in activity, and I want us to go back to the chat box and just look at the different colors that we've all shared collectively. And the first thing that I want you guys to look at is, did you notice any common emotional color association? So just take 2 minutes and just go back to the chat box and see if you noticed any patterns or any common emotional color association. Okay, let me just check the chat box. White, exactly. So a lot of people connect the color white with peace, with calmness. Okay. All right. Now for the next question. Why do you think, what do you think influenced your choice? Was it a particular mood? Was it a particular memory? Or is it a cultural meaning? Think of it and you can put it in the chat box. Okay, so some people are saying mood, some people are saying memory, experience, and vibe energy from the color. Exactly, some realistic things symbolizing colors. Mood plus cultural meaning. So, just from the few responses that I've gotten so far, also, you can see that there's not just one answer to why we feel a certain way about colors. There's so many things that influence it. A lot of you have said mood is what I'm getting the understanding of. Feel of the breath when we choose a certain color. Inner feeling. Okay. All right, let's go to the next question. Did any color surprise you with its emotional connection? Again, you can go back to the chat box and just see if there are any color associations which surprised you. I think for me, I remember someone typing in yellow because it feels neutral, not so happy, not so sad. So that's a color association that I found a little interesting because normally I would associate myself that color with maybe white or like a beige, but someone associated with yellow. So that's an example of how maybe that person's personal experience, a particular memory, or maybe cultural background could have influenced that response. All right. Okay, really appreciate you guys engaging in the chat box. Thank you so much for your responses. And thank you for the reflection as well. So I'm glad that you guys noticed common patterns and also you found, a few things interesting as I did. Yellow with happy, I associate. Yes, same Sri Lakshmi. Okay, so speaking of emotional connections, let's test how we associate emotions with certain colors. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next slide. Okay, this is the second activity, which is the mood match activity. I am going to show you guys one color at a time. And as I'm showing you the color, I just want you to type down in the chat box which emotion do you associate with that particular color? Or even if it's not associating, if you're seeing that particular color, what emotion is it evoking in you right now? So let's start with white. So you can type down in the chat box, what does this color make you feel? Can you show previous slide? Okay, just give me a second, guys. I'm just going to go to the previous slide. Someone is asking for it. Where did that go? Vani, do you want me to explain the slide again? All right. Okay, no worries. I'm just gonna quickly go through it again. So remember the activity that we did in the beginning of the workshop, which was the color check-in activity. I asked you guys to think about how you're feeling and explain it, but not using words, rather using a color. So for example, I'm feeling very positive today, so I think I'm feeling yellow. Okay. Now, there were so many people who responded on the chat box. So the next follow up question was, what do you think influenced your choice? Was it a mood, a memory, or a cultural meaning? So, why did I choose yellow? Is it because of my cultural background? Because, in my culture, yellow is associated with happiness? Or is it just because as a child, I would associate the color yellow because I was a Facebook child? So, all the emojis were in yellow. Maybe that's how I've associated the color yellow with happiness, or is it a particular memory? And then we have the third question, which is just a discussion. If any of the color responses, made you a little surprised in terms of its connection. So yeah, you can just go through the chat box, look at the different responses, and reflect. I hope that's clear for you. Okay. All right. Moving forward again to the slide that we were discussing. Yes, sorry. Yeah. So we were on white. Let me just go through the responses here real quick. Peace, neutral, calm, calm, tranquil. Okay, so a lot of the responses are hinting towards a feeling of calm, a feeling of being tranquil. Okay, let's do the next color now. What about yellow? Someone said elegant, happy, fun, friends. Yeah, I guess that's a very interesting association, friends. Yeah, but it makes sense. Joy. All right. I'm just going to keep going forward and you guys can keep on responding on the chat box and just look at each other's responses, okay? Then we have orange, red, pink, brown, black, purple, blue, dark blue, light blue, green, and gray. So you don't have to answer for each and every color if you don't want to. You can just pick and choose whichever colors you want to reflect on, and then you can type down the answers on the chat box. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer. It's all about your own personal associations. And with that being said, though, like personal emotional associations are personal, but sometimes there are patterns that follow. So I want you guys to be able to identify those patterns as well in the chat box. Red, happy and love. Black, confidence. Oh, two people have said black, confidence. Yes. Gray, regulated. Another very interesting response. Pink, soft. Yes. Purple, intuition. Yes, purple is often associated with intuition and creativity, actually. That's a good response. Okay. All right, you guys can keep responding. I'm going to move forward. And yeah, let's take a look at each major color and see the power behind them. I'm not going to be able to go through each and every color, but we will be covering some important ones. Since the time does not permit me, it's only 1 hour. So yeah, let's go with red first. So the power of red. Okay, red is the ultimate paradox because it also signifies passion, but it also signifies danger. And psychologically, it's highly arousing. And studies have shown that red can increase heart rate, blood pressure, and even physical reaction time. That's why you can see that it's used often in terms of warning or danger, like the stop sign. They use red, or in terms of to signify that there's danger ahead, sometimes they use red. So yeah, red is can be associated with danger or warning, but it can also be associated with passion, where it can elicit feelings of love. So it all depends on the context, and it can be associated with failure as well, actually, if you think about it, because even as kids, when we would not do well, we get a big red F, right? So it completely depends on the context. And we'll move on to the next color now. It's the power of blue. So, blue is associated with calmness, tranquility, and often evoking feelings of peace and relaxation. It represents trust, reliability, and it is a very popular choice for brands and institutions that want to inspire confidence. I mean, you can see here as well, the MindTribe logo is blue. So you can take that as you may. But blue can also symbolize sadness, reflecting moments of melancholy or introspection, reminding us the full spectrum of emotions. Then we'll go to the power of green. So, green is nature's neutral, representing balance, growth, and harmony. Exposure to green spaces, or even just the color, is strongly linked to stress reduction and improvement of mental well being. You'll see green highly used in these wellness retreats because it is associated, like I mentioned, with growth and renewal. And it can also elicit feelings of freshness, rejuvenation, encouraging us to connect with our environment. And again, like I mentioned, it embodies balance and harmony. Now we can go to yellow. So, yellow is the brightest color actually visible in the spectrum. It is pure sunshine and joy, and it's associated with high visibility, energy, and optimism. It is a mood booster and can stimulate mental activity and creativity, but too much of it can also be overwhelming and overstimulating. And if I don't know if you know this, but the brain tends to process yellow along with other colors like red faster than other colors because it is the brightest and most intense color in the visible spectrum. So yeah, like a lot of you mentioned, you associated color with happiness, with joy, and it's also a vibrant color that can boost creativity, encourage communication, making it an ideal choice for creative space and uplifting environment. Then we come to black and white. So, white symbolizes purity, clarity, simplicity, innocence, and new beginnings. And black is often associated with authority, mystery, elegance, power, formality. I think I saw two people mentioning that they associate black with confidence. And yes, black can be associated with confidence. Um, Psychologically, if we think about spaces, right? Spaces with white or very light neutral, it kind of allows our mind to rest and also declutter. And when we're in a black or dark colored space, we can have this sense of shrinking of space or feel more intimate or intense. And the combination of both, it embodies timelessness in design, often used to convey clarity and focus in communication, making ideas stand out effectively. So, yeah, with these deep dives, I think you all now have a richer sense of how each major color works. So, next we'll be revisiting and seeing shared patterns in what emotions we matched, and then see how brands use this knowledge intentionally. But before that, we will move on to the next slide, which is revisiting the mood match responses. So, again, I want you guys to remember the second activity where we did. I showed you different colors in a circle and I asked you guys to give responses for each color. So, look back at the responses that you gave and see if your response is in this circle or not. And even if it's not, don't worry. Like I said, color is subjective. At the end of the day, it's your personal association to it. But it's just interesting to see how those personal associations can come to play. So let me just actually go back to the responses. Sri Lakshmi said, I like red lipstick. Red actually makes my face glowing. Yes, red does have that effect. Pulls more attention, definitely. You stand out when you wear red. Green prosperity. So let's look at green. Yep, you can say that it's somewhere here. It has health, luck, nature, harmony, loyalty, safety. Let me look at something else. Black premium. Yes, black does have a sense of luxury. Okay, black is not there. Love as well as alert for red. Let me look at it. Yes, you can see here there's love and there's also action, there's adventure, there's energy associated with red. So yeah, I just added this because I thought it'll be interesting for you guys to see, if there are any sort of notice any similarities or differences. And if you do see any similarities or differences, I want you guys to keep it in mind because we will be exploring more in depth why these differences or similarities exist in the first place. So yeah, let's go forward. So again, here's just a few more colors that I've added because we did not go through a few colors like pink, purple, and orange. So don't mind, but I'm just gonna quickly go through each color. I'm not gonna cover red, green, blue, black, white because we already covered that in depth. But I saw that a lot of you actually mentioned the color orange when I asked you how you're feeling today. So, just to give you a little bit understanding of how the color orange makes us feel, it's often associated with confidence, success, bravery, and sociability. And it's associated with energy and enthusiasm. So, it's a blend of red's energy and yellow's optimism, and it often sparks excitement and motivation. In terms of sociability, research in environmental psychology shows that orange encourages conversation and warmth, which is why it's so popularly used in social spaces. It's also an appetite stimulant like red. Orange can also stimulate hunger, making it very popular in restaurants. Now let's look at purple. So, purple is associated with creativity and imagination. Studies on color emotion links found that purple was strongly associated with creativity, wisdom, as well as spirituality. The color purple is also associated with luxury and mystery because purple pigment was historically very rare and expensive. So, here there's some cultural background to why it's associated with luxury, and it still conveys royalty and wealth. In terms of its nature, I think it has a dual nature depending on the hue. So, light purple often feels calming and soothing, while deep purple feels powerful, dramatic, and even mysterious. In terms of pink, again, it depends on the hue. If it's a baby pink, then that's more soft and sweet. But if it's a bright pink, then that can have a different effect on you. But pink as a color is understood to be very nurturing and compassion. So it's linked with love, kindness, and softness. It's often used to represent care and tenderness. And it also has a calming effect. So some prisons and hospitals have actually used the Baker Miller pink, a specific shade of pink, because studies suggested it temporarily reduced aggression. All right, so we've covered the basics. Before we get into applying this to science and to your life, I just think it's a good time to take a short break. So, yeah, I want you to take a brief moment to remind you of my work at MindTribe. And while I'm saying all of this, if you guys feel like grabbing a glass of water, I'm going to take a sip of water with you guys. I've been talking for some time. Yeah, if you want to take a break, you can take a break. In the meantime, I'll also just remind you again of our work here at MindTribe. So, like I spoke about in the beginning slides, if the stress or anxiety or overthinking that I mentioned on slide 2 is impacting your day to day, please remember that we offer support. Recognizing the need for calm or focus, which is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about the colors green or blue. It's the first step to seeking help. So, we're here for you. A lot of you might not know what is counseling, but to very briefly explain it, counseling is talking therapy where a client speaks with a trained, non judgmental professional in a confidential, safe, and supportive environment to explore problems. And these problems can be anything. They can be work problems, they can be personal problems. Clients come to us to hopefully gain clarity, develop self understanding, and work towards positive personal change and emotional well being. It is a collaborative process focused on the client's goals and helping them to cope with life's challenges and achieve their desired outcomes. So, here are a few counseling misconceptions that we have that counseling is only for those who are sick. But in reality, counseling is for anyone who wants to be the best version for themselves. I like to give this just this comparison. when you go to a dentist or when you go to a general doctor for a regular checkup, sometimes you go even when you're not physically sick, just because you want to make sure that everything is up and running fine, you know. So in the same way, you can look at counseling like that. You don't have to come to counseling only when you have a major life crisis. Of course you can do that, but you can just come to counseling as well, just for that regular checkup that you would do for yourself physically. You can do that for yourself mentally as well, for your brain. So why choose MindTribe Counseling? MindTribe has highly talented counselors. Our team consists of experienced and skilled therapists. We also have very affordable charges. Counseling sessions range from 800 to 2,400, depending on the seniority of the counselor, of course. Affordable first session. So we have our first sessions at just 449, and then later on they go up to 1,000, 2,000, depending again on the counselor. And we have affordable packages as well. So once comfortable, you can invest in a budget-free counseling packages. So if you have any questions, you can ask me now by unmuting yourself. Or if you want to, you can stay back at the end of the workshop and go ahead and ask your question. In terms of contact information, I will be sharing it in the group later after the workshop, so you can reach out to me at any time. Okay. I see there are a few questions here, but my colleague has answered them, so I'll be leaving that. All right. Are you guys ready to get back into the workshop? Hope that break was helpful. Okay, Sri Lakshmi says yes. All right. Okay, now let's look at the impact of colors on branding. So, up until now, we've looked at color and mood, how it affects in our personal lives, how it makes us feel in a room, how it makes us feel in memories in certain situations. But colors don't just affect individuals, they're also powerful tools in business and in branding. Companies, they spend millions and millions researching which colors exactly make us feel a certain way, because they know that emotions drive decisions. So if you look at what they target, they look at the emotional connection, they look at brand recognition, and the psychological effects that it has on us. For example, 93% of buyers make decision based on visual appearance. This means that almost everyone, not just a few, but everyone is swayed by what they see first, not necessarily by the details of the product, but of the color. Color is the single biggest part of the visual appearance. Think about it. Before you taste a soda, test a phone, or drive a car, you see its color and then you decide whether you want it or not. So, why do you think Coca Cola is always red? Because the sight of red sparks energy, excitement, and urgency before you even open the bottle. The next stats that we can look at is 85% of buyers claim that color is the primary reason for buying a product. This shows that color is not just decoration, it's often the deciding factor. So people may not admit it consciously, but research shows that they pick one shampoo bottle over another because the color feels fresh or clean. I know that I myself am a victim of this, and I tend to pick shampoos that are either white, green, or blue in color just because, yeah, it looks or feels fresh. And in psychology, this is actually called a heuristic. So it's a mental shortcut. Our brain says this blue bottle feels trustworthy or this green logo feels eco friendly. That's why we choose it. So if you think about it, actually, why are eco friendly brands almost always green? Because people trust that color as a symbol of nature, safety, and health. And if you look at the other stats, which is 80% of people believe color increases brand recognition. Think of brands you instantly recognize just by color. Can you think of any brand at all? Mama Earth, exactly. If I say the color red, which brand comes to your mind? Colgate, Top Ramen. Yeah, Colgate, Top Ramen, Shadi.com. Exactly. So you can see what these brands are trying to do. They know very well which color will elicit a certain response from you, and they use that color purposely. And if you think about it, even without logos, if I just show you the brand or the color, you'll be able to say the particular name of the brand. That's how powerful color association is. And 90% of snap judgments are actually based on color alone. Within 90 seconds, people form an impression about a product, and up to 90% of that decision is solely based on color. So this means that color bypasses logic sometimes and goes straight into emotion. So if a product is the wrong color for its audience, it fails even before people test its quality. So I'm just going to show you a few examples actually. Here you can see a few examples. Like I said, Coca-Cola is red. It tends to evoke the emotion of excitement, love, and boldness. And orange, friendly, cheerful, confident, which is all of our favorite childhood channel, which is Nickelodeon. And then yellow, McDonald's, Snapchat. The brand often wants to evoke an emotion of happiness, optimism, or energy. And then blue, Ford uses blue, HP uses blue. They're trying to promote trust, strength, and dependability. And purple, like Barbie or Yahoo, they're trying to promote a sense of nobleness, imaginative, or just wise. So yeah, if you can think of any other examples as well, you can just put it in the chat box. Yeah, just like Facebook. Nowadays, Coco Melon, yes. I'm not so sure what are the color combinations of Coco Melon, though. I think it's has some red in it, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, you can see that brands use color psychology to play into our emotions and make us buy certain things. So yeah, now we come to the third activity. This is called the mood room activity. So here's the challenge. You'd have to choose an emotion, select whichever emotion that you want to feel right now or that represents the current stage of your life. And after choosing that emotion, I want you to choose a color that resonates with that selected emotion. If you want to, you can choose the same color that you chose at the beginning of this workshop. And after you've chosen the color, I want you to close your eyes and imagine that you're arranging your space. Now, this space can be anything at all. If you want to design a bedroom, if you want to design a workroom, if you want to design maybe a garden, that's completely fine. But you can start designing the layout of the room to enhance the emotional atmosphere that you want it to have. Okay. Again, tying it to the emotion that you chose in the beginning of the activity. And then you can add decorative elements. You can incorporate elements like art or different textiles that evoke different emotion or sensory feelings. You can take 2 minutes to do this activity and describe the experience either by unmuting yourself or you can type it out in the chat box. I'm just going to leave it up so you can see. Yes, Sri Lakshmi, go ahead.
Ma'am, I wanted to share something. Ma'am,
Of course.
earlier when I was in teenage, I shifted to my actual home. Right now I'm staying there. But then I used to think like in movies they portray pink rooms, magenta rooms, etc. I was
Yeah.
very excited, like it's very cool. I want to do that, like Barbie, like you told those colors. Then now I am like as I grow up, now I am about 27 years. So now I am like this. I am peaceful with this white, ma'am. I am feeling so happy with white itself. Earlier, I used to think that was the best color, and this different colors elicit the kind of like this bohemian thing in our mind. This like not so disciplined thing. It is actually good for some people, but now I feel this white is like it's okay, like peaceful. As I grow and mature, white is becoming more calm.
Yes,
So
I completely understand and I agree with you on that. Thank you for sharing your, your insight. And I think I relate to that too because growing up, even I had, and not pink, but I had a neon green room. And yeah, it was a phase of my life. But as I've grown older with the different experiences that I've had, my emotional connection to color has also changed over the years. So even I prefer like a beige or a white because it like subconsciously makes me feel like my mind is decluttering, it makes me feel at peace. So yeah, maybe you can think about that, and like when you're designing this room also, you can think about maybe because you already have a white room, if you were to think of another color that would make you feel peaceful, what would that color be?
I'm actually maybe rose, ma'am. Rose is not pink actually. Pink
Pink.
also is something more exciting. I want something more calm. Or light blue actually. Because
Yeah.
every emotions have been tamed around this age. But ma'am, actually there are many people who are still excited even at 35 to this do this bohemian thing and
Yes.
extravagant colors. There are many people, but I feel this is more calming for my
Of course, like we spoke about earlier, right? It's completely dependent on you. What makes you feel calm? So maybe for you, it's a white that helps you calm down and just go into that restful state. But maybe for other people, it's actually that bohemian colors or like bohemian design. So it's completely subjective upon your own taste. And yeah, thank you for sharing, Sri Lakshmi. Let me just go through the responses. Beena said, I just changed my room yesterday with some boho themed paintings that I painted myself. Can't imagine any other way now. Yes, exactly. So maybe for Beena, she likes that bohemian kind of style and bohemian kind of feel. It makes her feel at peace. Maybe it reminds her of like the beach or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to think. But yeah, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer, whatever feels right for you. Okay, I hope that you guys actually design the layout of your room. And if anyone else would like to share the response, you can do that in the chat box or by unmuting yourself. But if not to, it's completely fine. You can just share that with yourself privately. Or maybe you can even use it in the future when you're designing your new room. All right. Okay. I'm going to go forward now, but thank you so much for participating in that activity with me. So now we're going to be looking at something that we have been discussing a little bit, but now we're going to look at the examples with it, which is how colors affect different people because of the cultural background. Okay. So let's look at the first country here. It's our own, which is India. So, in Hindu tradition, white is the color of renunciation and detachment. And you can see that widows traditionally wear white to symbolize withdrawal from worldly pleasures. At funerals, white is worn to show purity of the soul departing and a family's grief. Whereas in the West, white symbolizes purity and innocence, and that's also not just cultural difference but religion as well. There's a slight difference in that. In Christian traditions, while white represents holiness and purity, for example, during baptism the babies wear white, and even during marriages also the bride is supposed to wear white. And that's because in the 19th century, Queen Victoria wore a white dress at her wedding, cementing that Western association of white with purity and with marriage as well. But if you look at modern psychology, like Sri Lakshmi just mentioned, white suggests clarity, simplicity, and a clean slate. Now let's look at another example, yellow. So, yellow is associated with knowledge and learning in Hinduism. It's seen as a very sacred color. It's associated with Lord Vishnu and Lord Krishna, who are often depicted wearing yellow garments. And it's worn during festivals like Vasant Panchami, symbolizing wisdom, prosperity, and auspiciousness. However, in Germany, yellow is seen as envy. The phrase Gelb Vornade, which translates to yellow with envy, dates back to medieval Europe. So, envy was believed to literally sicken the body. That's why they cause the yellow or green pallor. So, that's where the association comes from. The association carried into German folklore and literature, solidifying yellow as a marker of jealousy, bitterness, or deceit. When I was researching this, I found this very interesting actually. And then you have red. So red represents luck in China, and it's rooted in ancient Chinese traditions. Red symbolizes life, energy, and vitality. Historically, red was associated with fire and one of the five elements in Chinese philosophy, representing prosperity and joy. Red is everywhere in weddings, Lunar New Year, and festivals, believed to be a ward of evil spirits and attract fortune. Now, a stark contrast to that, in South Africa, red is associated with mourning. So, in African culture, particularly among the Xhosa people, red is linked to blood and sacrifice. During apartheid, red also became associated with violence and the bloodshed of struggle. So, that's why at funerals, red cloth is sometimes worn to honor the deceased and acknowledge the pain of loss. So, you can see that culture shapes our perception a lot. And in the West, however, we all know that red symbolizes love. Like when you think about Valentine's Day, red is everywhere. So yeah, it's all depending on how different cultures they perceive different colors differently, and it's not just because of emotion, but it's also because of certain traditions that were carried out. So you can just think and type in the chat box if you want to, how has your cultural background shaped how you see certain colors? I'm going to move on to the next slide now, which is to understand, apart from cultural background, why else do we associate certain colors with a certain emotion? Now, these can be because of two things. The first is memory, and the other is life experiences. So, the perception of color is a complex subjective process, significantly influenced by life memories, cultural background, and personality traits. While the physical stimulus or the light wavelength that we spoke about is subjective, the meaning and the emotional response attached to a color are profoundly personal and learned. So let's talk about the life memories and personal associations. Life memories create a unique layer of meaning for each individual, often overriding universal or cultural associations. So this sometimes is referred to as personal color memory. Excuse me. The color becomes inextricably linked to the event, person, or object it was experienced with. The mechanism of how it works is that when a strong emotional experience, whether that's positive or negative, is linked to a specific color, the sight of that color later in life can trigger a subconscious memory, emotion, or a physiological reaction associated with that original event. For example, aversion to green. So a strong dislike for the color green can come maybe if someone spent a long period of time in a hospital room which was painted a specific shade of green. So while recovering from a traumatic event, that shade of green might be unconsciously associated with fear, illness, and anxiety, causing them to avoid it in clothing or in other aspects of their life. So now we'll look at cultural background. We already spoke about it in depth, so I'm just going to quickly talk about this. Cultural background dictates the learned societal meanings and symbolism attached to colors. These associations are passed down through tradition, religion, history, and language, creating a collective understanding within a group. So, a color can hold diametrically opposite meanings in different cultures, as we saw with the different countries. Next is personality traits and preferences. Research suggests correlation between personality traits and color preferences as well. Through these links are often they're often less direct and more debated than cultural or personal associations. Certain color choices may reflect underlying psychological dispositions or emotional states or even self-representation strategies. For example, Personality may influence the color, the choice of colors that align with the person's characteristic arousal levels, need for stimulation, or self-expression goals. Excuse me. For example, I saw someone mentioning that black makes them feel very confident and very elegant. So this is where it comes to play. So yeah, those are how the different ways of how color affects how we associate color. It's not just with cultural background, but it's memories and life experiences too. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so now we move on to a different section of our workshop, which is healing through color, where we'll talk a little bit about um, chromotherapy, okay, which is the belief that color affects our mood and health. And this is very ancient, actually. If you talk about the ancient roots, ancient civilizations like the Egyptians, and also traditional Chinese practices and Ayurveda in India, they often used colors for healing. And this was known as chromotherapy or color therapy, such as using colored light or painted rooms to treat ailments. So, what exactly is chromotherapy? Chromotherapy is a form of holistic healing that dates back thousands of years. The core principle is that colors are simply light energy of different wavelengths, and each wavelength has a unique vibration that can interact with the human body's own energy systems. So the practice posits that when a person is exposed to a specific color, that color's vibrational energy is absorbed through the eyes, skin, and the body's energy centers, often referred to as chakras in our Ayurvedic traditions, which can in turn influence three things. It can influence our mood and our emotion, making it calming or stimulating the nervous system. It can influence physiological function, affecting metabolism, heart rate, and blood pressure, and it can also influence our mental state. So it can either promote focus, creativity, or relaxation. So, yeah, that's a little bit about color therapy or chromotherapy. Now, how can we use this to our own advantage, and how can we use color to lift our moods? So far, we've learned about the different emotional associations to colors, right? Which color makes us feel which particular emotion. We've also understood where this association comes from, whether that's cultural background, it's a personal trait, or a specific memory or experience. So let's look at how we can use these colors to lift our mood. Okay. So this is where the science gets deeply personal. Color as an emotional anchor. Because colors reliably evoke emotions, we can use them to actively support our mental health. So if you're struggling with anxiety, maybe a blue throw blanket on your couch becomes a visible, tangible symbol of calm. If you're feeling low, adding a splash of yellow to your immediate environment, like a vibrant mug or a sticky note, can be a tiny yet intentional mood lift. So these are very micro interventions that can shift your state without you trying much, but just the object of that color being there. So I hope that you can take this and use it as well for yourself. Maybe again, you don't have to take it as it is on this slide. If purple makes you feel calm, then use purple and use that in your environment, or use that in your space. Or maybe if you're having a day where you're feeling very overwhelmed, you can put something purple on just to help yourself calm down. It's a small intentional thing, as I mentioned, that makes a big difference. So let's move on to our next activity here, which is the second last activity of the day, and it's the mood palette activities. So I'm going to be asking you three questions, okay? And using everything that we've learned, you can now start building your own personal color palette. I want you to read these questions and answer them as thoughtfully and truthfully as you can. Take a moment right now and look inward and think about this. Which colors do you tend to avoid and why? Think about the color you want that you don't normally go for, and why is it that you don't normally go for that color? Do you think it looks bad on you, or do you think there's a certain emotional connection that you have that's negative to the color, that's why you avoid it? And again, if you want to share, you can share. If not, it's completely fine. You can just do some inner reflection. All right. I'll move on to the next question here, which is which color or colors do you gravitate towards the most and why? Here you can think about what do you normally gravitate towards when you're getting ready, perhaps first thing in the morning, or your surroundings, your home or your room. Which colors do you normally go for when it comes to decorating your room or decorating your environment, and why do you choose those colors? And then you can think about the third question, which is if you had to choose a color to represent yourself as a person, what would it be? For example, if I had to choose, I would choose green because it represents growth, it represents harmony, and maybe it's not completely who I am as a person right now, but it is who I want to be in the future. So, something like that, you can think about it, and you'll realize that at the end, after answering all these three questions, you have your emotional color palette. So, you know exactly which colors you avoid, which colors you gravitate towards the most, which color you would like yourself to be represented as. And just knowing or having this information, you can use this information to bring a very positive impact in your life. Sri Lakshmi says, I want to be green now, I am orange. Blue or green. That's a very beautiful reflection, Sri Lakshmi. Growing slowly with orange, but want to be motivating green in the future. It's black, mysterious, confident, and powerful. Okay. So as you're giving the responses, I do want to just say that the primary learning objective of this activity is to, demonstrate that color and emotion, they're both very intrinsically linked at a personal level. Like if you look at it, color is a rapid emotional barometer. So it serves as a quick, intuitive, emotional shorthand before we can fully articulate a feeling. Like right now, also, when I was asking you the questions, before we can even describe that feeling that we feel in words, our minds often associated it with the color. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. So notice how quickly you were able to pick a color for your mood or for the room that you picked earlier. You didn't have to think through a complicated list of feelings. Your brain defaulted to a color, and this shows how fast and automatic the color emotion connection is. And even in terms of emotional vocabulary, this activity helps us bring and build emotional literacy by using a visual anchor. So, by labeling your mood with a color, you've already started to give your feeling a visual name, even though that name might not be in many words, but just in a color. When you pause to observe a strong feeling later, try asking yourself, what color is this feeling? It's a simple tool to check in with yourself and to quickly identify your mental or emotional state so that you can take the necessary steps to regulate yourself. Okay. I'm going to be moving on to the next slide now. And this is the last activity for today. And I really want to encourage all of you to participate in this activity, even if it's just through the chat box. So look at the dominant color that you're wearing today. Like, none of you knew, I mean, you had an idea what the workshop was going to be about, but none of you knew the content of the workshop, right? So I want you to think back, why did I pick this color today? Why did you choose a blue? Why did you choose a green? Why did you choose a red or yellow? and think about that color, why you chose it, look at the color, and also answer this question. If your color could talk, what would it say right now? For example, I'm wearing yellow, so I would say that I am radiating like sunshine. So something along those lines, like maybe black because I'm feeling mysterious or confident. I want you all to type your responses in the chat box. Pink symbolizing healing. I didn't choose, but oh, inadvertently symbolizing my healing stage now. That's very powerful, Sri Lakshmi. And I'm glad that you're on that journey. Kanvi said, thoughtful with white clarity. That's nice. It's good to know. I'm going to take that as, you have much more clarity now after this workshop in terms of how color affects you. Valentina says, beige pants, pink shirt, and a white jacket with black stripes. Wanted to get some action done, but in a relaxed way, not in a tensed mode. Yes, I think those colors really, it does reflect the kind of emotion that you were trying to go for, because it has pink, it has white, it has black, and beige is a color that I also personally associate. Beige being like a very calm, very neutral, relaxed color. Any more responses? We've come to almost the end of the workshop now, so would appreciate if you guys just participated in this one last activity with me, and then we can call it a day. Bina says black, like I already said, it gives me confidence. It's a darker shade. Some people may not be ready to look the darker side of the individuals. That's again a very powerful statement made. Yes, some people are not very ready to look into the negatives of an individual, because it's uncomfortable for them. It may bring up anxiety, but yeah, it's nice. It's good to acknowledge that it is a side that exists in everyone, and it's a side that needs to be acknowledged and appreciated as well, because it's part of being human. Pink is for girls and blue is for boys. I mean, it is at the end of the day very subjective. I would say that comes from a lot of advertising, and pink is always advertised for girls, blue is always advertised for boys. But at the end of the day, I would always encourage everyone to wear whichever colors that they feel most comfortable in. All right. Okay, once again, thank you everyone for participating in the activity. So we've reached the end of our journey, and these few final slides, I want you to look at it as like, your own personal toolkit. It has summarized the most important, we've summarized the most important takeaways as well. And I think the most powerful takeaway is that color works on two levels. On a conscious level, you know that painting a home office blue might promote calm, or wearing yellow might boost your mood. That's an intentional choice. But at the subconscious level, it influences us all the time. Think about being in a supermarket. You often gravitate towards a certain product, not because you read the ingredients, but because the label might be bright and it might have caught your eye and it might have signaled energy or urgency. So, your job now is to bring more of that subconscious power into your conscious awareness. So, we've also established that color affects our physiological and psychological state. This isn't just a fun fact, it's a tool. Okay, I want you all to remember that. This means that you don't have to be a passive recipient of color's effect. If you know you have an important presentation, you can intentionally wear a color blue to feel confident, or maybe the color green to feel balanced. If you're feeling anxious, you can intentionally spend time in a space with soft, cool colors to support a calmer mental state. So So I believe that all of you are now more equipped to be an active designer of your own emotional environment. And this also explains, I guess, this workshop also explains why the same colors can mean different things. When we choose our color check ins, we saw a spectrum of responses, not just one type of response. Of course, we noticed patterns, but we also noticed how your association with green might come from your culture or a cherished memory, perhaps, or a personal experience. So, being mindful of these associations is key, and it helps you choose colors that are authentically positive and supportive for you, not just what a guidebook says. So, to conclude, I want you all to start making tiny tweaks. If you can maybe look at your wardrobe, if you're trying to spark creativity, don't just reach for a certain color that you know that you don't feel creative in. Like someone has mentioned, purple is the color that makes you feel very intuitive, very creative. So maybe try a pop of purple, a pop of orange. Look at your workspace. If you're feeling like you're having a mental block somewhere, maybe you can start with decluttering your vision board or your desk and putting in a color that helps you enter that focus or flow zone. Maybe adding a small plant, a calming piece of art, or even just rearranging things around can help you with feeling a little bit more lighter or a little bit more relaxed in your workspace to ensure optimal performance. So these tiny intentional shifts in colors around you are what will bring you a continuous positive boost to your daily mental wellness. Remember that the world is a spectrum. It's not just black and white. And by understanding your personal emotional color palette, you can ensure the colors around you are always serving your mood and your goals. Thank you so much once again, everyone, for engaging in the workshop. Thank you for participating and for taking out time of your busy schedules to be a part of this workshop today. I hope that you guys enjoyed, and take your time to thank my colleague as well in supporting me throughout this workshop.